Hello and welcome back to episode number 3. In the first 2 episodes, we created this space and then we created the interactivity to move from room 1 to room 2. And I introduced you to the basics of how to add 3D models. We're going to take that up a notch. Since I don't really have a theme in mind, I decided to go and ask Claude AI some ideas about how to create an immersive escape game, and he gave me some interesting ideas around some clues that we can create. So the first one would be a periodic table puzzle. Next one would be a quantum clock challenge. I like the idea of that one. So let's talk about how could we get a clock here in this room. In the second video, we talked about going down here to the creation menu, and we did not talk about how to create a model from scratch using generative AI. So if I click on model, I can enter in grandfather, clock, tall, old, create model. And as you can see, it says in progress. You can close this menu. While that's working on that, I'm going to talk about another way to access 3D models here within Frame. In the second video, we talked about the library, and then this AI library, which is prompts from other users in the past. Here we go. Here's our grandfather clock. Perfect. I'm going to click add to frame. While we're waiting on that, I'm going to point out over here under the heading where it says choose model from. Notice that there is a button here that says Sketchfab. Sketchfab is a online library at sketchfab.com where people have been creating and sharing 3D models for many, many years. If you go to Sketchfab and create a free account with a username and a login, and you come back here to Frame, when you click on Sketchfab, initially nothing happens. You'll notice that it says login in the right-hand corner. I can click there. All it does is have this pop-up saying Sketchfab wants to allow permission for Frame to be able to look up models, etc. Click accept, and then down here on the right, if I were to, even though we have a nice grandfather clock, I'll put in another search, and you can see here there is a wide variety of models that are available from Sketchfab. But I like this one that we got from Generative AI, so close this out for a second. Let's go back to the edit menu. Right now it is spinning. I'm going to turn that off, and I want to put this in the corner. Again, using the gizmo to slide it along here. I now know that it's intersecting and close to the wall because you can see it starting to merge inside of the wall. And same thing with the floor. And that seems a little small, so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Turn it so that it is a little bit clockwise like that. And then I want it to be in the corner of the room down here. Okay, perfect. And again, once you have things where you want them, you probably want to go ahead and lock that position so that you don't mistakenly move it in the future. So once again, if I go to creation menu and I go to 3D model, just to quickly review, we have the library of material built in to FrameVR, small but usable library. AI are all of the AI models that have been created over the past months since this has been available. Sketchfab would go to a third-party library where you can go and find anything from very small basic models to full-scale cities. Sketchfab is a wonderful, wonderful resource. And then lastly, you have inventory, which would be anything that you have created over the years would be added here. So any 3D model or any generative AI model that I have created is available here in my inventory. So those are the ways to get items directly from this choose model from section down at the bottom. You'll notice up here at the top that there is a way to upload a GLB file. So there are other apps that are out there ranging from simple and free, such as Tinkercad, all the way up to Blender, where you can create 3D models of your own and then upload them directly here to Frame. So that's the model creation and import section. Now that I have the 3D model there, what else can I do? Well, it makes sense that if we have a grandfather clock that maybe we could have some sound. So what I did is I went to pixabay.com, just put in for grandfather clock sound effects, found this nice one up here at the top. I'm going to hit download, and now we're going to go back to Frame and talk about importing music or sounds. If I go to the creation menu and go to more, go to audio, and it should prompt me to go to my computer, and I can go out and find the grandfather clock and bring that in. So all audio within Frame is represented by this circle, as well as a menu down here at the bottom. You'll notice that you can't change the scale of that currently. You can change the rotation, although that really wouldn't do much. So what I like to do is I like to actually bury this or hide it inside of the item that is actually going to be playing it. But before we do that, once it's in there, I would lock its position. We're going to talk about private zones in future episodes, but importantly down here, positional audio. One of the excellent things about FrameVR and WebXR and these immersive learning spaces is that you have the ability to create what is called spatial audio, which is how we hear and perceive audio in real life. So when you set this audio range to near, then you will only be able to hear this when you are close to it. Now, that's not going to be super important. This room is kind of small, so it probably is going to be audible throughout the whole thing. If you want to see how far this is going to be able to be heard, you can click on the little eyeball icon here, and that creates a visual for you to be able to see where you're going to be able to hear this. And as I said, it will be faint on this side of the room, but you are going to be able to hear it no matter where you are in this space based on the size, which is fine. And then yes, we want this to loop. So we're going to put the audio into there. And you also want it to autoplay. In this particular scenario, I want this to be just constantly going because that's what clocks do. So once those are all set, then I can lock the position. And when I get out of that edit mode and refresh the page, what we should be able to hear is the grandfather clock ticking to create our sense of presence. Perfect. Oops. And if I move back here, as I said, you can still hear it, but as in real life, when you get closer, it is louder. Okay, so we've got a 3D model that we brought in, and we also have brought in some audio. Let's talk a little bit more about the creation menu. You can bring in images, of course. And so if I were to go to Google image search and type in periodic table, that's not how you spell table, but that's okay. You can see that Google image search is going to be a way to find images. Wait for a second for that to load. Okay, so our images here. Now, images are a little bit more challenging to move around and to get lined up correctly. I'm going to turn this like this. Again, this is where the gizmo really comes into play. Usually I put the picture or the image this close to the wall so that I can kind of see how it's going to interact. Straighten it just a little bit more. And there we go. Now it is flat up against the wall. If you want that image right now, in order to read it, you would have to come way over here close to it. You can, if you would like, over here on the left-hand side, you can turn it on to zoomable. And that means when the user, if I get out of edit mode and I click on this, that allows them to zoom in and see just the photo. Couple other settings here that are important for the images. We've got locked position, which we've already talked about. Snap to surface can help sometimes when you are trying to have the image stick to the wall like that. Magnifying glass would be an interesting one if you are trying, in terms of an escape game, being able to come in and when you hold your mouse over it. So if this was a very small image that had a lot of fine details, then the magnifying glass actually would be kind of an interesting way to embed some hints or some clues inside of the image that the user could look for. Let's go back here, make private to zone. We're going to talk about that later. Spin, we've already talked about. Hide at a distance is an interesting, again, I don't think it's going to come into play here for this room because this room is too small. But if I move, yeah, I can't get more than 10 clicks away. We'll cover that in a future episode where we can actually test that out. Turn off hide at a distance. Always face camera can be helpful. In this particular scenario, we want it on the wall. But if you have something where you want the user to be moving and the picture or the item constantly follows them. And then lastly, we've already talked about add a link. And this set of options over here on the left-hand side is pretty common for most of the other items that you can do here to create for your escape room. We're not probably going to be very interested in many of the other pieces here other than possibly shape. You can, of course, upload videos. And again, we'll talk about voice zones in a future episode. So for this particular episode, we have covered all of the various ways to get 3D models into the environment. We uploaded some audio and we've got that looping, and then we've added an image to the wall. Next episode, we will take this that much further, and we will start talking about the various ways to embed clues, as well as different ways to move from room 1 to room 2. Right now we have this basic click, which is not very much an escape room if you can just click to get to the other room. We want certain things to appear or doors to open and become available as part of the clues. So stay tuned for that in the next episode.